I'd like to introduce our Dean, Indrajit Chaubey, to get us off on the right track. Dean Chaubey.
Thank you, Sandy, and good morning, everyone. We just realized like 5 minutes ago that Sandy, I, Jill, and some of the speakers, we were in the wrong room, and that's not the first time that has happened. Let me tell you a brief story. March 9th, it's my day 9 on campus as the Dean of CAHNR. We have a new president, and president has called a meeting with all the deans. And I'm unfamiliar with the campus map. I still don't know all the buildings. I don't know where they are. And I go and sit in a room that was not meant to be the room where president was going to meet with the deans. 5 minutes late into the meeting, I realized that I must be at the wrong place. So I wander around and I go to the meeting room, the right meeting room, 15 minutes late. And that's not the first impression I want to make on the new president we have got. But I told the story, we all laughed about it. So this happens. Anyway, thank you everyone for coming to the workshop on optimizing mental health and wellness of faculty and staff, COVID-19 edition. I really like the topic, and I want to thank Sandy and Office of Academic Programs for organizing this workshop. As we all prepare for the spring semester that is going to be mostly online, we are facing what may be the most severe mental health crisis in the history of university education. A mental health epidemic of epic proportions is really rising out of COVID-19 pandemic. It is fueled by many factors: student social and physical isolation off campus, faculty and staff burnout from rebuilding classes in a new delivery method and mode, and stress and fear of our own health and health of our family and friends. And this will unfold even further in next 3 to 5 months until we all have vaccinated immunity. And hopefully that will bring some hope and some measure of normalcy when we are all engaged in person and face to face. The ramification of this pandemic, this epidemic on top of pandemic, is likely going to be long lasting, and it's likely going to be very pervasive. We are now starting to see the results of some of the scientific papers that are now coming out based on studies of mental health impacts on university faculty and staff. And some of the early papers that I have seen, what they suggest that faculty and staff are worried about the pandemic, and these worries have morphed into chronic stress. And these have serious implications for mental health. In our own college, we take a lot of pride in being a college that cares a lot about each other and cares a lot about our students. We are collegial and we are student-centered. And this means that meeting the emotional and mental health needs of our students who are also struggling may take a toll on our own mental health. When our students are hurting, we hurt. And COVID-19 presents a real risk of compassion fatigue, something that we do not want to happen to any of our faculty and staff. So this is a very timely topic, and I sincerely thank all the speakers: Anne, Vicky, Allison, David, Cindy, Megan, and I'm not sure if I'm missing anyone else from the speaker list. Thank you all so much for your time to present at this workshop. I greatly value your time and help with such a timely topic to our faculty and staff. And so thank you all again for coming to the workshop. Thank you, Academic Programs, for organizing it, and have a good day.
So much, Indrajit, for your thoughtful words. So we're going to start off the meat of the conference with Ann Thompson Heller. She's the staff psychotherapist for Shaw Student Health and Wellness. She's going to talk about mental health in the COVID era. So, Ann, go for it.
All right, great. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and
Okay, sharing your screen.
Yeah, I think so. We'll find out in just a moment if there's a problem. Let's see. All right, can you all see that? Yes, okay, I think I see a thumbs up. So let me just get the slideshow going here. So thank you for having me. You know, I think this is it's such an honor to be here, and I'm thrilled, you know, to be able to participate in this workshop, and that this is something that's being, you know, given time and attention. You know, and so thank you. I appreciate the invitation, and I'm honored to be here. I am going to talk about mental health in the COVID era, you know, specifically talking about, you know, what is mental health, touching on our current landscape, and then going into different coping things, you know, coping strategies, both for ourselves and for helping other people. And then I'll end with resources. And one of the things that I do like to just share is that, you know, all of this stuff is none of this stuff is a one size fits all model. And so as we are all different, you know, different things work for us in different ways. We have different stressors, we experience things in different ways. And so I encourage folks whenever I do these workshops to take what they like and leave the rest. You know, take what they find helpful, you know, and adapt it to your own circumstances and your own experiences. So when we talk about mental health, you know, I always just start by talking about what is it? You know, it's something that we all have. And the World Health Organization defines it as a state of well-being in which every individual realizes their own potential, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to their community. And when we talk about how, you know, everybody has mental health, one of the things that I think can be important to recognize is that mental health, just like physical health, can fluctuate. Sometimes we may experience it positively. Sometimes it may be more of a challenge, but we do all have it. And it's really made up of our emotional and psychological well-being. You know, how we feel, how we think, how we act. And when we talk about coping, I'm going to touch on these things, you know, talking about, you know, how we get in tune with our emotions, you know, how we, you know, cope cognitively with our thoughts, and how those things impact our actions and behaviors. Because we know our mental health, you know, affects different aspects of our life. You know, it affects how we manage stress, how we navigate stressful, challenging situations, but it also impacts how we function at home, at work, with our decision making and our social relationships. When stress piles up, you know, there may be this desire to pull away from other people, when in fact moving toward other people in a way that's safe, you know, during a pandemic, can be helpful in helping us cope and navigate, which we'll talk a little bit more about. So what are the stressors that we have going on right now? They are, I think, in many respects, abundant. You know, we've talked about, you know, it's been mentioned, you know, this global pandemic and how it's really disrupted and impacted all of our lives. But it's not just COVID-19. You know, we're also experiencing increased visibility of systemic racism, you know, as well as other isms, you know, homophobia, sexism, ableism. You know, we're seeing a lot of the systemic discrimination, marginalization popping up around our country in ways that hasn't been as visible in a long time. And then the political climate, and that's causing a lot of stress for folks. A lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry. It's impacting relationships. You know, and when we talk about stress and stress management, I think sometimes it's important to think about how, you know, I might be able to handle this particular stressor. I may be able to handle this particular stressor. I may be able to handle this one, but when they all come in together and at once, you know, it's something we call stressor pileup, and it becomes much less manageable, overwhelming, and impacts us both mentally, physically, emotionally, and can really take a toll. You know, as was mentioned, you know, and this list is not comprehensive by any means, but the current climate is impacting people, you know, in terms of their loneliness and isolation. And we talk a lot about social distancing, and I am guilty of talking a lot about social distancing. And when in reality, I think it's helpful to think about it as physical distancing and not social distancing, finding new and creative ways to stay connected socially. And that's hard to do during this time. But we are seeing increases in, you know, loneliness and isolation. financial insecurity, folks losing their jobs, uncertainty, work challenges, as has been noted, having to transition to remote learning, online teaching. For some, that's easier than others. Family relationship dynamics, have been challenged in numerous ways. In some instances, family members living under the same roof who haven't lived under the same roof in years. We see an increase in anxiety and depression. There's fear. There's fear of our own health, our own safety, and that of our loved ones. There's grief and loss. And then there's also fatigue. We've been in this state, with this global pandemic since, March of last year for sure, for certain. Some might argue a little bit earlier, starting in February, for us here in the US. But there's fatigue, and that really wears on people. And then, maladaptive coping. And I'll talk a little bit about that, possibly throughout the presentation. But what I mean when I say maladaptive coping is we're seeing an increase, in substance use, in people's attempts to employ strategies that help them cope with the challenging situations, that feel like they're helpful in the time, but may not be. And I think substance use is a good example, of that. Sometimes it's avoidance. That can also be a maladaptive coping strategy. It can be social isolation, and distancing ourselves from people because we're feeling stressed or anxious or depressed. And so we're seeing an increase. And as I said, this list is not comprehensive. We could add to it, I'm sure, in numerous ways. And so, I would invite all of you to think about, what you've been experiencing, what some of your challenges have been. When we talk about coping, which I'll talk, more about, sometimes being able to just pause and check in with ourselves can be tremendously helpful. How am I doing today? How am I feeling today? What have I been experiencing? Kind of takes us off of that autopilot mode, and allows us to attune into ourselves and what our needs are. Stress, talking about stress or pileup, stress is also on a continuum. Mental health is on a continuum, stress is on a continuum. And oftentimes when we talk about stress, I hear it talked about in the context of something that's unhelpful or unhealthy. There are healthy types of stress. In fact, stress can serve as a tremendous motivator. It can help us to do our best. It can help push our performance, help us to achieve more. But there's a certain point, there's a certain threshold where that healthy stress sort of tips the scale and becomes what we might call toxic stress. It's that stress or pileup where it starts to impair our functioning and make it more difficult for us to achieve the tasks that we set out to do. We experience imbalance in functioning. This is where if we experience toxic stress, we may start to see impacts on our sleep, our eating, our nutrition, and we may start to experience breakdown, of our overall, our function and our mental health. So how does stress work in the body? And I'm going to touch on these things just very briefly. In fact, a lot of what I talk about during this workshop or this presentation, could have multiple presentations in and of themselves. But I think it's important for us to understand how stress does work and manifest in the body, even just on a very basic level. And so when we talk about stress, we all have something called a sympathetic and a parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is the part of our body that employs, fight, flight, freeze, appease, responses. These are responses that can be really, really helpful when we're experiencing danger or threat. It's our body's activation to a stress response, trauma response. This is, like I said, it can be very helpful when there is threat or danger. The challenge with the sympathetic nervous system is that it can get activated even when there isn't actual threat or danger to ourselves. And then, we talk about, well, how do we manage that? We can actually engage our parasympathetic nervous system, which is the part of the nervous system that calms the body. And we can do that through practice, through different techniques that help to communicate to the brain that it's okay, I'm doing all right. And it helps to kind of calm or quiet that sympathetic nervous system. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we do that. Particularly when I talk about mind-body coping strategies. One of the things that I do think is important when we think about employing the parasympathetic nervous system is that it takes practice. Oftentimes when we start using coping skills, if I'm experiencing a really high degree of stress, and that sympathetic nervous system has been activated, and I am told to take some deep breaths, I may feel like, well, that's not helpful right now. That's not what I need right now, because there's part of me that's thinking I need something that fixes this. This is, I need something more immediate. Well, what we know with the parasympathetic nervous system is that using some of the skills that I'm going to talk about through a practice, over and over again, helps strengthen that part of our nervous system, and then we're able to employ it a little bit more easily, and it's more effective over time. It won't necessarily eliminate the stressors, but it helps us to cope with them a little bit more. And it is a practice, which I'll talk about. And I think it's important to know that when we are coping with stress, and that when we are coping with, any particular challenge, navigating it is not necessarily a linear experience. Stress can go, up and down. Sometimes we feel it, worse. Sometimes we feel it or more intensely. Sometimes we feel it less intensely. And same with, the development of coping skills. And just because I was able to cope really well with this particular stressor in the past doesn't mean I should, necessarily be able to jump right in and cope with this one right now, because things are always changing. Circumstances are always changing. Context, contextual factors are always changing. And so part of the reason why I bring this in is, I think expectations around how we navigate stressors can influence how we actually navigate them. If I think I'm supposed to be managing this really well, and I don't think I am, I might get hard on myself. I might kind of beat myself up for it. And those thoughts might not be so helpful in helping me to cope through it. So recognizing that, it ebbs and flows. Again, if I think I'm supposed to just coast through it, I'm supposed to be able to tackle this challenge, it might set myself up for further frustration or stress when I realize that I'm not doing it as effectively as I would like, or as I would hope. So how do we cope? How do we cope when these stressors are piling up and we're experiencing them on a, potentially semi-regular basis? First, we want to take care of ourselves. Put your masks on first before assisting others, said just about every flight attendant ever. When our tanks are empty, it's really hard to help other people, and to be there for other people. I think, even in, mental health profession, we talk about sort of empathy or compassion fatigue. If we're not taking care of ourselves, how can we take care of other people? And so being able to cope can actually, and take care of ourselves can actually benefit not only us, but those around us as well. And when we talk about self-care strategies, we often talk about it, through kind of three different lenses, as I had talked about before, mind, body, our emotions, our behaviors, and our thoughts, behavioral and cognitive. For the mind body, I often start by talking about the importance of just being able to pause and check in with ourselves. It's something that, we talk about in the context of mindfulness practices. And mindfulness is actually a form of meditation. Oftentimes when we talk about meditation, we have this idea that, we have to sit, close our eyes, focus on our breathing, and that is an excellent form, an excellent form of meditation. And it's not the only kind. Saying I meditate is like saying I exercise. It doesn't necessarily say what it is that I do to meditate. And mindfulness is a form of meditation. Being able to say, how am I feeling right now? How's my body? Are there areas of tension? How's my breathing? How's my heart rate? How have I been doing during all of this? During, this pandemic? The increased visibility of racism in the political climate. What are the factors that are affecting my well-being? Both the ones that are contributing to my stress, as well as the ones that are supporting me and helping me navigate the challenging times. And being able to sort of take pause and check in with ourselves can be a really great, effective strategy in just showing ourselves care. You know, it's kind of like asking ourselves, how are you doing today? You know, and we also, you know, will focus on different strategies that can employ that parasympathetic nervous system and relax the body, you know, when we're experiencing high levels of stress. One is something called progressive muscle relaxation. And progressive muscle relaxation is where we move up and down the body, tensing various muscle groups for a certain period of time and then relaxing them. You know, when we're experiencing stress, we often will tense. And so what we're doing when we do progressive muscle relaxation is we're actually causing that tension and then relaxing it. And then when we relax, it's sending signals to the brain saying, oh, we're relaxing now. And so what I will often do is when I'm teaching these skills, you know, is I will have people clench their fists, which you're welcome to do now. Or sometimes people will like do their, you know, their feet, their toes, and hold those, you know, that tension for, I usually do, you know, 8 to 10 seconds. At the end of that, once you're done doing that and you relax, sometimes people will experience, you know, tingling sensations. They'll feel their muscles relaxing a little bit. And again, what that's doing is sending signals to the brain saying, oh, it's okay, we're relaxing now. Now, progressive muscle relaxation is really effective, or most effective, when we're sitting down or lying down. As I mentioned, we can start from the head and go down, you know, tensing different muscle groups, you know, even including the face, you know, scrunching up the face, you know, our shoulders, so on and so forth. Or starting at the bottom, you know, starting with our feet and moving our way up. This does a couple of things. Not only is it, you know, creating that tension and promoting that relaxation, but it's also taking our mind, our thoughts, and focusing on different parts of our body. Because when we're focused on something, we're actually not able to focus on something else. You know, oftentimes, you know, we think, oh, I'm a great multitasker, I can do all these things at once. And our brain shifts back and forth very fast, but it can only truly focus on one thing at a time. And so it helps to also bring the attention into the body a little bit more. Diaphragmatic breathing is another one. You know, when we breathe, you know, on a kind of a daily basis, and I say we generally, you know, everyone's different. Breaths tend to be more in the chest and shorter and shallower than perhaps when we're sleeping. You know, that tends to be a more deep diaphragmatic breathing. So what we do when we do this kind of breathing is we're increasing the flow of oxygen into our body, slowing our heart rate, you know, and helping to calm, you know, our mind and our muscles and help us to relax. I'm going to take us through a brief exercise with this one, a breathing activity. And it's one that some people call squared breathing. It's, you know, basically we're going to breathe in through our nose, hold for a few seconds at the top, breathe out through our mouth, and then pause for a few seconds at the bottom before we breathe in again through our nose. Some folks will really, you know, really use counting along with it. I don't necessarily use counting because I think, again, we're all different. Our breaths are different. And so paying attention to our body and doing what feels good and feels deep for us might vary. But if you want to count that, you can go ahead and do that as well. I tend to put my hand, you know, on my chest and my stomach when I do it. And so again, if you care to join me, please do. But we'll do it 3 times, just starting to breathe in through our nose, taking a deep breath in, holding that breath for a few seconds at the top before exhaling slowly out the mouth. Then pausing at the bottom before taking another deep breath in through the nose. Pausing at the top, and then breathing out. Pausing at the bottom, and one more time, taking a big deep breath in through your nose. Pausing, and then out. Some folks, when I do this exercise, find it very helpful. Others don't care for it. Again, I think it's in the spirit of take what you find helpful, take what you like, and leave the rest. This can be a really helpful one to do, just like the progressive muscle relaxation. When we need just a few minutes pause during something stressful, it can also be really helpful when we're getting ready to go to bed, to try to relax the body if we're having any difficulty falling asleep. Um, and again, it's a practice. When I talked about before, doing things that are practices that employ and help activate that parasympathetic nervous system, these are some of those practices that help us to be more mindful, help us to engage, our body and calm that stress response. Meditation is another one. And I know afterwards, I think there's going to be a guided meditation to take you through it, but there's a number of ways to meditate, as I mentioned. A very common one is, listening to guided meditations, or, pausing and focusing on our breathing. It's really about taking time to just kind of sit or to be mindful of where we are and what our experiences are. As I had said before, a lot of these things are practices. And when it comes to meditation in particular, I have talked to so many people who have said, oh, I can't meditate. I can't slow my mind. I can't turn my mind off. And one of the things that I think is really helpful to think about with meditation is that the mind is meant to think. That's what it does. And so meditation isn't necessarily about turning off the mind, but about redirecting it. And so if I'm meditating and I'm focusing on my breathing, and I notice all of a sudden I'm thinking about my to-do list, or, what is coming next, as soon as I notice that I'm not focusing on my breathing anymore and I redirect it, that's meditation. It's just bringing it back in. And it does take time, and it does take practice. And there really is no wrong way to do it. Even when students will say to me, like, I can't meditate, I've tried. Well, how do you know you can't do it? The fact that they know they can't do it means that they're aware and that's meditation. That's a start. That's something. And so these are some of the mind-body coping strategies that we talk about. Behavioral strategies. I often will stick to the basics. Sleep, eating, exercise. And when we talk about sleep, when we're stressed, it can really impact our sleep abilities, our ability to fall asleep, stay asleep. We may wake up earlier than usual. And we recommend 7 to 9 hours a night. What happens is, when we're not getting enough sleep, it almost magnifies any of the emotional experiences that we have. It's like putting a magnifying glass over the stress, the frustration, and it makes it harder to cope and navigate. It makes our emotion regulation a lot more difficult. And so if there is difficulty falling asleep, I'll talk to folks about, using things like melatonin or sleepy time tea, doing meditations at night, doing that progressive muscle relaxation. And then, there are a number of other sleep strategies that can be used to help with sleep and promote better sleep. Nutrition. And this, there may be folks on this webinar that even know far more about our microbiome than I do. But there's a lot of research that looks at our gut health and how that impacts our mental health and our well-being. And so, again, this isn't necessarily going to be an instantly gratifying fix, but when we can be mindful of what we're eating, that can help how we're feeling, how we're functioning. It can help our sleep. It can help, our energy levels, and it can help our stress management. Similarly, exercise, 30 minutes a day, has, nice benefits for our mental health. It can help promote sleep at night, tire us out a little bit more, but it also increases, dopamine and serotonin levels of the brain that help us manage and navigate stressful situations. And then social connection. Again, thinking about it not necessarily as social distancing at this point, but physical distancing. And how are we getting creative to connect socially? Sometimes that may be, trying to find creative ways to volunteer. It may be, reaching out. It may be writing letters and sending letters to our loved ones. More and more things are happening online. But finding ways to strengthen those social connections is really important because we are social creatures, we are social beings. And even just being around our loved ones can increase, oxytocin levels of the brain, which help us to feel good. And again, navigate stress and provide support during stressful times. Cognitive strategies. There's a theory that we often talk about when we talk about cognitive coping called cognitive behavioral therapy. And the theory in short is that thoughts cause emotions, not events. And that if we change our thinking, we can change the way we're feeling. Cognitive behavioral therapy does operate on, we use what we call a cognitive triangle, where our thoughts, actions, and feelings are all interconnected. And so if I have a thought that is perhaps anxiety provoking, I'm going to experience higher levels of anxiety. Those higher levels of anxiety may cause me to potentially avoid a situation. But in reality, perhaps it's just a thought and it hasn't happened yet. I talk with students all the time about, wasted worry. When we're worrying about something that it's a valid worry and it hasn't happened yet. But that worry in and of itself can create a lot of distress, anxiety, and may cause us to avoid things. So when we talk about cognitive coping, in this context, I'm talking about minding our thoughts, and looking for unhelpful thoughts. Again, this is a very brief overview. I'm not going to go into all of these things, but when we're talking about, are thoughts helpful, harmful, we often talk about cognitive distortions, distorted thinking. Maybe it's mind reading, jumping to conclusions about something. Maybe it's magnification, thinking of a potential scenario or worry, and all of a sudden it becomes bigger than it is in this current moment. Oftentimes worries about the future can result in magnification. Emotional reasoning, assuming that how I'm feeling in this particular moment is in fact reality and fact. When we're thinking about, checking in with ourselves, being mindful, what are my thoughts? Is it helpful? Is it harmful? And then, one of the things that I'll do a lot with, with students or with clients that I work with is focus on fact. Kind of ground myself in what are the facts? What do I know? And sometimes, cognitive distortions are so strong, they feel like facts. And so how do we know that to be true? And kind of pull ourselves down into the present moment. Again, I know this is a very quick overview of this, but I think we can challenge our thoughts. We can challenge our unhelpful thoughts, which is really the underlying point here. And one of the ways that we can even challenge our thoughts is by employing, gratitude, an attitude of gratitude. That's right, I said it. An attitude of gratitude. There's research that shows that, when we try to identify the things that we're grateful for, it does increase positive emotions. It increases resiliency to stress. It helps us to appreciate the small things, perhaps small and large, perhaps increases our self-worth, reduces depression, lowers our blood pressure. It's sort of, like, what are we focused on? Are we focused on the negative? And if we're focused on the negative, we're going to start to feel the impacts of that focus. If we're focused on the positive and we're focused on the things that we're grateful for, we're going to start to feel the impacts of those thoughts as well. And so something as simple as, writing a daily gratitude list can be really helpful. How do we address concerns with others? This is, I'm going to talk specifically about helping students and supporting students, but I do want to be mindful that a lot of these skills can be transferable. So they can also be, related to our loved ones, our family members, and so on. But if we're, working with a student, maybe you get an email from a student indicating their level of distress. Maybe it's a phone call. Maybe it's, an office hour that's held virtually and a student is visibly upset. You can be the one to intervene. And in fact, I know the care that you all have for your students is tremendous. And we get calls a lot about how to provide support. And that just shows how much you all care. We talk about the importance of talking with the student, asking them how they're doing, checking in, just being able to ask someone how you're doing or how they're doing, that can make a world of difference. If you notice somebody is, not engaging in their typical way, or not getting assignments in, or maybe struggling, the fact that, you reach out to them, that may mean the world to them, because they know they've been seen. Allow the person to talk about what's going on, and using kind of reflective listening, to let them know that you hear them, you hear what they're saying. It's not uncommon for students, who are experiencing high levels for people, not just students, for people who are experiencing high levels of distress, to have thoughts of suicide. And so to be able to ask the question, if in doubt, are you having thoughts of suicide? I know you're experiencing a lot of challenges right now. Have those thoughts ever crossed your mind? Oftentimes, at Mental Health Here, we do normalize it and let them know that it's not uncommon when people are experiencing what you're describing, to have these thoughts enter the mind. Or do you have those thoughts? And then of course being ready to provide them with resources as needed. We have something called on-call consultation in our office, and at any point, please don't hesitate to give us a call. If you have a question about a student, or a concern, or want some guidance on, how do I provide support to this student, you can call us and we'll walk you through it. One of the things that I'll tell people, oftentimes, is to let the student know about our resources. Right now we have on-call services during the break, Monday through Friday, but starting over this weekend, starting on Saturday, we have 24/7 around the clock emergency services. So students in crisis can contact us at 2 a.m. And we'll have a clinician available for them to speak with. And so we have emergency services. I also let folks know about the CAHNR team, which is a group of staff on campus that reviews students who there's concern for. So if you have a concern for a student, making a referral to the CAHNR team it's always recommended. It's studentcareteam.uconn.edu is the website. I'm also happy to provide some of this information, as a follow-up. But studentcareteam.uconn.edu, and if deemed warranted, that they'll reach out and check in with the student. And then, of course, if there's ever concern for immediate safety, call 911 or UCPD. Even if the student isn't on campus, UCPD can often help, connect you to the right troop, the right location. So immediate, maybe if somebody actually threatens to hurt or kill themselves, or is looking for ways, indicates ways of doing that. Talking, writing about death or suicide is often something that I would always say, definitely make a care team referral. Call us if you need to, but if there's concern that this might happen now, if there's concern that this may happen in the immediate moment, call 911. Like I said, we're happy to consult, but again, these are things that sometimes need immediate intervention. And I will say the CAHNR team is not a crisis response. We can help with crisis response. 911 can help with crisis response. CAHNR team may not see referrals until a day or two later. And so if it is imminent, call 911 or reach out to us for help, and we'll support that process as well. Distress, things to kind of look for that may indicate that, we want to provide a little bit more support, things like helplessness, maybe not, participating in the way they had, increased, anxiety, withdrawing, in any communication that they're not seeing a reason for living, of course. So what are our resources? We have over 20 clinicians on staff that provide services in multiple languages and have a wide variety of expertise in different areas. So, like I said, we do on-call consults. We also provide individual therapy. We have a number of services that I'll touch on. This is, what we call our circle of care. And so we do provide some self-directed services like our meditation, our yoga, our drop-in support, and our mindfulness workshops. Then we do provide brief therapy, group therapy, psychiatry. We work with students to refer them into the community when they need more than what we can give, or are looking for, something maybe long-term or weekly, something to that effect. Then we have crisis services, and those, as I mentioned, are 24 hours during the semester. What these stars refer to are services that do not have any additional financial costs to students. And so we do use insurance for brief therapy, group therapy, and psychiatry. But again, if a student is concerned about that, we would still want them to call and see if we can work with them to help navigate that, because we have also a really great case management program that'll support students in that way. And so these are, again, resources for them if they reach out and need your support. For all of you, as I mentioned, the on-call consults, we are here for you. We want to support you in helping them in particular. And so if you have a difficult student or aren't sure how to navigate it, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We provide trainings. Some of them that are very popular among faculty and staff are, helping students in distress and suicide prevention, or UConn Helps. Some of these resources are also available on our website, and you can see we have a 20-minute UConn Helps suicide prevention training available that anyone can use. Meditation Mondays. Our meditation is open to faculty and staff. It's virtual. You're welcome to join that. And then we have a number of self-directed resources that faculty and staff can access. We've got on our website a couple presentations using CBT related to COVID-related anxiety and worry. And it's very, very helpful. It's a 3-part series. You can go through it. There's also a website called CAHNR, which is through the Division of Student Affairs. And on this website, they have tabs for staying healthy, active, and calm. And on their calm tab in particular, they have a number of guided meditations. These are, again, some of these are really designed for students, but they're available. I can get on there, search for them, and click on those links, and so can all of you. And so I wanted to share and let you know that those are available. We have yoga virtually. And this is a picture that was taken from one of our sunset yogas, and kind of shout out to Steve Zinn for all his help in helping us use the hill for our sunset yoga. We provide yoga throughout the semester virtually, and you're all welcome to join that as well. It's Tuesdays and Thursdays, 5 and 4 respectively. And so that's it. Those are the resources, and I know more will be talked to about different resources that are available, but here's our contact information. If you have any questions, you can reach out. Again, my name is Ann Thompson Heller. You can email me if you have questions, reach out to us if you have questions, but it's been a pleasure. So at this time, I don't know, I think we're right up on time, but if we have a few moments for questions, otherwise I'm happy to follow up in emails afterwards.
I have a quick question, Anne. Is there any cost to faculty and staff for the yoga that
Nope.
you guys provide? Okay.
No, it's open and free service. Great question.
Because I've used that in the past. I just couldn't remember, and it is, I mean, I haven't done it virtually yet, but I just like, yeah, free yoga.
Yeah. Great. Would love to have you. Right. Any other questions?
You can just
I have a
unmute yourself.
question.
Sure.
I have a question. Is it open to our spouses? Free virtual yoga. Is it open to our spouses?
That is a great question. That one I don't know the answer to. We've always done it. So when it's here, it's faculty and staff that come in. You have to sign a waiver. Again, this is virtually. And so as a faculty member, if you're doing that and you have someone next to you, you have someone next to you. That's sort of how I'll answer that. But I do think, I think to maybe access it virtually, you may need a net ID and password. But yeah, there are perks to virtual, I think, in some ways, silver linings.
Well, it'd be a great thing to, in keeping with our discussion, is it not helpful to have those things extended to one's spouse and family?
Absolutely.
I think that's one of the issues, if you'll allow me, that I see is that there's a lot of what you're talking about, I find, is difficult to maintain throughout the various levels.
Right.
So supervisors of faculty are not in keeping with what you're talking about in some instances, and supervisors of, and so I think that it's very difficult to maintain what you're talking about through all the levels of interaction. And
Yes.
just my point, this would be an opportunity to do so.
Well,
I
I
think-
think our next presenter too is going to actually bring those layers in as well. Correct, Sandy?
Yes. There are employee resources and there's the SHAR resources and sometimes those have been difficult to parse out, to understand what's available to whom. And so I think Vicky will try to talk about that, and plus the EAP speakers as well.
Absolutely. That's good.
Yes.
Thanks,
Oh,
Val.
well, thank you again. And I am available if folks have questions or follow up. But thank you. I appreciate your time.
Let's all give a virtual
Yay.
round of applause. Yay.
A lot of thank yous in the comments too, Anne.
Yes, this was really helpful, Anne. We really appreciate it so much. Really great stuff. And we will have the presentation, right? You can share the presentation as well as the recording available for folks. And so this will be easy to access for you. So next, let's see, until 11 o'clock, Vicky Fry is going to give us a transitional activity, and also you can take a bathroom break. But we're having a stretching activity with Vicky Fry, and then she's going to come back and talk about the employee engagement and wellness options from human resources. So Vicky, are you there?
I am here. I apologize. I continue to have WebEx issues and I am not on camera, but I assure you I'm here. And also along with those problems, there's screen sharing. So Vicky, if you wouldn't mind sharing my presentation, it would be appreciated.
I could do that. I can do that with
Sandra.
for you. Yeah,
Thank
hang
you.
on 1 second. Hang on 1 second.
So one thing I wanted to mention, in regards to what Anne said about their resources being accessible for faculty and staff. We've, in some of our programming that we've run since COVID, had some students participate, and like Anne said, it's one of the benefits of this virtual world that, different populations can access things online, if they're not password protected. And what I've really heard from some of these students joining is that they appreciate to hear that faculty and staff are struggling as well, because as we know, they're really struggling. And it really, it kind of humanized, I think, for them that it's not just them that's struggling. And, we all are struggling during this time. So they really appreciated that. I just wanted to make that point. So we're going to do some desk stretches. This is a program, and if you can do the slideshow view, I think
Oh yeah, pardon me.
see that better. This is actually a program that we ran in December. We had a couple different desk stretch refresh breaks. We coordinated with UConn Recreation. This is Lauren Dalton actually in the picture, so you can't see me show you the stretches, but you can see Lauren. So whoever wants to participate, we'll just go through what we can make it through until 11. And I'll provide this flyer as a resource too, and also share my slides. But we're going to start with some shoulders. And this is, you can sit or stand to do these. Lauren's sitting in hers, but whatever's comfortable for you. So grabbing one of your arms above your elbow and with the opposite hand and pulling it across your body toward your chest, and you'll feel a stretch in your shoulder. And one thing you want to make sure that you do is don't tense up your shoulders. A lot of times we tend to do that during these stretches. Just relax your shoulders. I'm going to hold that for 30 seconds or so. And then we'll move on to the other side, and maybe we won't spend as much time on each one to try to get through some more, but if you switch, and again, opposite arm above the elbow, Stretch across your body, keeping your shoulders down. All right, so good shoulder. Moving on to the second one, something with the triceps, bringing an arm overhead, dropping your forearm behind you, resting your hand on your back, kind of between your shoulder blades. And with your other hand, grab right above your bent elbow. Just kind of pull gently until you feel a stretch in your shoulder. Another shoulder. Make sure you're relaxing those shoulders too with this one. Don't really pull your elbow. Just rest that hand. Rest the hand in the between the shoulder blades and rest the hand on the elbow. All right, and if we want to switch and go on to the other side. One thing that I want to mention with, you know, a lot of us are still working from home. Our setups, workstations may not be great. I know mine's not. You know, and we may be struggling with that. So whether working at home or in the office, environmental health and safety does do, we can let that one go, ergonomic assessments, and they are doing, you know, work from home consultations. So if you feel like you need a better setup kind of to help you with maybe some, if you're having some issues, Shauna Losor is available to do that. And they have kind of a recording on their website around work from home ergonomics. The next one is with the wrists. So we're bringing our arms straight out in front of you. One arm, keeping the palm facing away, fingers toward the ceiling. And with the other hand, gently just press the fingers towards the body until you feel a stretch in the wrist or the forearm. And you'll just hold that for 30 seconds. I always remind you, keep those shoulders down and relaxed. You can move on to the other hand. All right. So that went quickly. We got through 3 of the stretches before 11. Sandra, I'll let you, do you want me to just go into the rest of my presentation?
Sure. I think I'm going to have to move it for you, correct?
Yes. Yep. So, and these were some more. So I'll provide
Just-
this flyer to you guys so you can have this. I encourage you to keep it by your workstation, and when you're feeling a little tense, just to take a break and do some of these stretches. So, you know, as Sandra said, I'm going to talk about some of the human resources, wellness programs and resources. I'm the manager of employee engagement and wellness. And you can go on to the next slide. And the Office of Engagement and Wellness was established by Chris DeLello, the Chief Human Resource Officer, just in mid 2019. So we're a very small office. It is myself and one of the staff members, Suzanne Rogos. You'll see her advertising a lot of our wellness programming. And what we're focusing on is kind of those 8 dimensions of wellness that lead to our kind of holistic well-being. Primarily the ones that are bolded, you know, physical, emotional, social health, environmental, spiritual, and financial health as well, and wellness. You know, in partnering with human resources and provost office, you know, the intellectual, vocational, and occupational wellness as well. And really, we're looking at that, you know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs when we offer these programming. Where, you know, wellness isn't just one aspect. You know, there's so many dimensions that make us whole and make us well, to really get us to where we feel safe, psychologically safe. We have that sense of love and belonging and esteem, and where we can reach that kind of that self-actualization in our work and life. So that's the focus of our office. As we said, pretty small right now, hoping to grow and get more established over the next couple of years. And COVID has made the start of that journey very interesting. We can go ahead on to the next slide. So for today, I just wanted to highlight some of the resources and the programming that are coming out of our office. And starting with the online resources, we did establish a wellness page specific to COVID, which you can access from the Human Resources homepage. And we have information and resources on self-care, family care, where to get help during this time, and tools for effectively working and managing from home as well. Some of the things that I really like under the self-care section, Mental Health America really has some tremendous resources they've put out during the time of COVID. There's flyers to reference, and we have a lot of their webinars, which you can link to right from that site. There's webinars on resilience and handling stress, and even they have ones about how to work from home effectively during this time. So a lot of good resources under there. And just to mention one other with the tools, working and managing from home, there's a lot of free LinkedIn videos, and we have links to some of those under that section as well. Under our work life website, we have a well-being section where we have multiple resources there as well, which were, pre-COVID resources. So we do have two kind of different areas with wellness information. Two things I wanted to point out are a monthly newsletter. It's that well-balanced monthly newsletter shown on the bottom there. It's through a partnership with WellCOA, the Wellness Council of America. So each month, there's a new newsletter published with a lot of great resources and tips, and I encourage everyone to look at that on a monthly basis. We do post something in the Daily Digest. I know everybody reads through it every day, what's in the Daily Digest, but also on our social media too. We put a notification out when it's available, but should be there on the 1st or 2nd of the month. And then WellCOA also publishes monthly bulletins, which I find really useful. There's 4 different categories: family safety, lifestyle, self-care bulletins, and just kind of general wellness bulletins. So each month there's a bulletin in each of those areas that is posted out on our website. Some during this time are COVID related as well. Some are not. So a lot of great resources out there to take a look at. And we do, again, advertise those in the Daily Digest when they're posted. And then, our work life website has a multitude of resources around, those everything to do with life. There's elder care, there's family care resources, as well as, that's where the wellness information is, community resources too. So that's kind of our hub for that holistic wellness. Go on to the next slide. So I wanted to point out just some of the programming that we've run. This is November, December, and January. Just, a little sampling. If you haven't noticed what we're putting out there, we did a healthy holiday eating series in November, as well as a caregiver respite session. It was National Caregiving Appreciation Month. The Joy Wall, going back to the first presentation with Anne, that practicing positivity and gratitude. Sometimes we feel guilty celebrating things during these hard times, But as she mentioned, it's so important for us to be in that right positive mindset so we can handle adversity. So we had a joy wall put out where people could find where they found joy during this time, because it's important to celebrate those moments as well. We did the desk stretch breaks like we started with. We had a little focus on giving back. Sometimes what makes people feel really good about themselves is giving back to their community, especially during these times when the communities are struggling. Financial wellness. These are some sessions coming up actually this month that you're probably we're just advertising. We have a debt management and credit repair session. I think that one's tomorrow. And a planning for your future, which Prudential Retirement, who manages our state retirement plans, is putting on later in the month of January. So we're really focusing on kind of building those healthy habits this month. So financial wellness, and then giving yourself space. So which stands for the sleep, being present, staying active, being creative, and healthy eating. So we've created a Microsoft Teams site, and where there'll be articles, posts, and people can share, how they're giving themselves space and staying, healthy and active during this time. That social aspect is so important. And I know we're all in a ton of meetings. It seems, we can't pop across the hall and talk to anyone anymore. So it seems like there's more meetings. So we get some of that in the meetings, but it's a little bit different when you can pop into something and talk more, on a personal level. So we can go on to the next slide. Some specialized programs that we've put out since COVID started. I did a strategies for building your resilience at work session with a lot of kind of tools and resources. Really for, I did mostly focus on your work environment, but different strategies that you could use, everything from emotional intelligence to working with your manager, to that self-care. So it's a presentation that's recorded and out there. You'll have the link. It was part of the Thriving at Work series, co-sponsored with the Office for Diversity and Inclusion. So the presentation, the PowerPoint, and some resources are out there via that website. You just need to sign in with your NetID and password. We also ran a 6-week stress management techniques program over the summer, which was very well attended. And again, through Microsoft Teams, very interactive. Probably do something along those lines again in the next few months. We had a month of daily well-being practice where we did yoga. That was the month of October, mostly yoga, but some meditation. I know we've had many employees from your group join us in our programming. And then the Employee Assistance Program has done a multitude of stress debrief sessions as well. I see a question just popped up. Where are these posted? So, we advertise everything through the Daily Digest, social media, and on the university calendar. We do keep some resources from the programming out there. We are working on a space where we have all of our recordings housed, and we're working through that now, but it should be out there soon. I think hopefully that answers your question, but if not, we can talk about that further. And let's go on to the next slide, and we'll kind of transition you into the Employee Assistance Program, which will be going next. So, as we have, SHAW for Student Health and Wellness, and we have Human Resources, and part of what we offer is the Employee Assistance Program for faculty and staff. So that's through the UConn Health Employee Assistance Program, and David and Allison are with us today from that program. I just wanted to talk a little bit about kind of that difference, SHAW versus EAP. I mentioned the SHAW is primarily for students, although, we have access to their online resources and that virtual programming during this time, which is great. You know, and the human resources will put out the employee programs for faculty and staff, graduate assistants as well. You know, and Shaw would do training for working with and assisting students presenting with that mental health, you know, well-being issues, which was discussed. When we look at who's eligible under the employee assistance program, it's employees, including graduate assistants. So those are, you know, TAs, RAs who have that graduate assistantship. And I include postdocs too, because, you know, that question has come up and sometimes people reference postdocs still kind of in that student status. They're covered under the faculty staff employee assistance program. So the nice thing with the graduate assistants, they're students and they're employees. They have that dual role, so they could access services at Shaw or through the employee assistance program. And then household dependents are eligible for the employee assistance program as well. So in what services? Kind of, and I'm just doing the basics here, and you know, I'm sure Allison and David will add on to this. But it's private assessment, brief counseling, and or referrals as necessary. So the brief counseling is generally 3 sessions, but if a referral is needed, you know, during those sessions or at the end, they would make that referral for you. So they assist with personal and or work-related problems that could potentially impact job performance, your health, your mental and emotional well-being. So it's really just any kind of issue that's presenting to you that is affecting your life and your job. Things like stress, financial issues, legal issues, family problems, office conflicts, you know, alcohol or substance abuse. So whether it's with you or a family member, a friend who's experiencing issues, you know, that's affecting you. So you or your household dependents could get services through the employee assistance program. You can go ahead up to the next slide. Which is really, I think, just the wrap-up slide. If there were any questions for me, and that was, you know, really my transition into the employee assistance program with their presentation. And I'm not sure if David or Allison is leading that, but if you have any questions, my email is there, and I will do I'll make a PDF of this so you can share that with everyone.
Well, thank
Were
you.
there any other questions for Vicky? I don't see anything in the chat, but anyone want to, well, sorry about this. Okay, if hearing none, hopefully I'm unmuted. Next up, thank you very much, Vicky. Actually, thanks a ton. That was really good. And actually, it's great to see all these resources and have them reviewed for us so that we can take advantage of them.
You're welcome.
Thanks
My
a million.
pleasure.
Yeah, it's really nice. So next up, we have Allison Powell from the Employee Assistance Program and David Francis from the Employee Assistance Program, who will talk about coping and resilience in unprecedented times. How many times have you heard that? Unprecedented times. Oh, Lord. You know, but it's the truth. It's unprecedented. Every moment we wake up, it's unprecedented again, like Groundhog Day. But they're really going to tell us how EAP can help. And thanks so much to Allison and David. You guys are running your own slides, correct?
We are running our own slides. Can
God bless you.
hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Good morning, everyone. I'm Allison Powell. I'm the program manager of the EAP, and I'm joined by my colleague, David Francis. I can't see you, Dave, but I'm assuming you're on there.
Can't see you either, Allison. Where are you hiding? I don't know. It's like hide and go seek in situations here, but yeah, pleasure to be with you folks. Allison, if you don't mind me starting off, so I was very pleased to sit in and was really appreciative of Ann's presentation this morning. And then I think Vicki did a very nice transition to talk a little bit about helping you guys learn a little bit more about the Employee Assistance Program, what we do, and how perhaps we can be a resource in these challenging times. One or two other things I might quickly mention, and Vicki touched upon this, but I'd say something that we have had some contacts, even within some of your work groups here in your school, are times when there have been a critical incident. There are situations that come up where, similar to what the student health and wellness does for students, that we're called for a consultation. We encourage our managers and staff to contact us when they have a question, a concern. All of our services, and Vicki had mentioned this already, are free of charge to the employee. And there were questions mentioned about availability of services to family members. We extend all EAP services to family members as well. And we see a very large number of faculty and staff who really want to have their adult child come in for some visits, or their spouse, or they're having a marital situation. So we are very liberal about doing that. And while our model is 3 sessions, we found, particularly in the days of moving towards remote therapy, that we're really being pretty generous in extending that. We really see that we're trying to get people through situations, and feels a little artificial to just stop abruptly at the 3rd session, because that's what we do. So we've been trying to be very flexible about helping people meet their needs. So I just wanted to mention those couple of things. So Allison, I think you jump in if you want.
Yeah, and Dave, I appreciate those comments. I'd like to just also build a little bit more on the introduction to the EAP for those folks that have not accessed our services or don't know a lot about us. Just a little about an employee assistance program. I mean, these programs are designed as organizational tools to help employees have easy access to services, really for anything, like Vicki mentioned. And they're offered, as Dave said, at no cost to you. We don't collect insurance. We collect just a little bit of information for our own internal records. But it's important to know that services through our program are outside the realm of management. They're outside the realm of the unions. I mean, I sometimes consider us to be Switzerland. I mean, we are a place to go for folks to reach out and talk about anything that's concerning them, anything they're worried about, or to seek guidance on how to find resources. Sometimes it's a therapist. Sometimes it's resources for financial concerns or those sorts of things. So there's really no reason why you can't call an EAP. And one of the things to know about an EAP is we are available to you, and we aren't an urgent program, much like Shaw is not an urgent. Well, I take that back. I mean, I think they can be reached on urgent cases. We are typically an 8 to 5 program, so that if you call us, we are available to speak with you that same day, and we'll call you back that same day. If it's after hours, we'll call you the following workday. But in the case of a situation where you may really need to speak to someone immediately, you can reach an EAP counselor by calling our switchboard. And you would be directed to that number by calling one of us. So there is always the possibility of reaching an EAP counselor. This month, the month of January, I happen to be the EAP counselor on call. I had a call 2 nights ago, talked through a situation with an employee, and followed up with her the following day. So that is certainly a service that we're available for. One of the things I would say is, if you look at the research, it would show that about 12 to 18% of an organization's employees, struggle with something. that may interfere with their job performance. And so the EAP is designed to be one tool to use to help with that. We are, as I mentioned, we are a program that is not, it's a voluntary program. It's not a program that you have to come to. Oftentimes a supervisor might suggest EAP to an employee, and it's important to know that it can't be mandated. I mean, it's really designed to be helpful to you. And a supervisor typically would share information about an EAP, or an HR person would share information about an EAP in order to be helpful. We're not really intended to be part of a disciplinary process. So what we often say to people is, if your supervisor or manager suggests EAP, you don't have to come. You don't have to come see us. You just have to be able to figure out how to do your job and to, not allow what's going on to impact your work performance or your attendance. So what I hope people understand is that we really are a place to come and talk through what's going on and get some, just some help figuring that out. And everything we talk about is confidential. I mean, we don't share information with supervisors. We don't share information with HR without a consent from the employee. So in a few cases that might happen where employees would like for us to do that, to be involved in some situations, we certainly can do that with a release. The only exception I would say to the confidentiality is if we are worried about someone's safety. Obviously, we would get more involved. So, but it is a confidential program. And we work with all members of the organization, like I said, sort of in a neutral role. So we work closely with the Ombuds office. We work with, we work with management and HR. We work with the bargaining units, and have found that that's the best approach, is because obviously we all have the best interests of the organization in mind. I mean, we want people to be successful. Staff and faculty are our biggest resource. They're our biggest investment too. So once we train someone, obviously it's important that we retain them. So those are my sort of introductory comments about the EAP, and we're going to talk just a little bit more about it as we go along. We thought what might be helpful, though, is to think about what is probably the biggest reason people call us, and that is stress. And stress certainly is a part of most of our lives, especially this last year. I mean, we all face stress. Normatively, stress is a part of our lives at different points in time. And certainly over the past year, it's been particularly difficult for many of us. The American Psychological Association publishes a study on stress every year, and it certainly was no surprise that in 2020, the numbers were much higher than we've seen in the past. So we're going to talk about, I thought what would be helpful is to talk a little bit about what the EAP is hearing right now. And one of the things is that people have been faced with high levels of stress for a very long time, a prolonged period of time, more than normal. So, if you are planning a wedding, for example, I mean, you expect to have some stress in your life. You expect that to be difficult for a period of time, but there's an end point. Or if you're dealing with an illness, there can be some prolonged stress, but at some point that gets resolved, hopefully. Right now, people are struggling with the unknown of when this is going to end. So since the pandemic began, we've all experienced stress, and that is the one thing we hear from absolutely everyone. But the good news is that we've also seen people really demonstrate resilience, and most people have adjusted to, what is so commonly called the new normal that we've experienced. I mean, we pretty quickly were able to ramp up, and many of us work from home, and it's not always easy. We had some snafus this morning with technology. I mean, that's something that we've all faced. But it's been pretty remarkable to see how well most of us have been able to manage and to adjust. And certainly over the summer months, we saw sort of a settling down in the incidences of stress. I mean, people were able to get outside more and enjoy more sort of distanced social interaction. Maybe they'd meet down at the bike path and take a walk with a friend. So some of that was going on, and we saw some sort of settling down. But since the resurgence of cases, there's been a little bit of again, an uptick in the amount of stress that we're hearing about from a lot of you. It's obvious that our usual coping mechanisms have been interrupted. I mean, we all have our own unique ways of managing stress. For lots of us, that may be exercise. Some of you may enjoy going to a gym, and that's not something that's easy to do right now. Some gyms are not operating as they were before. For some of you, you just may be uncomfortable going to a gym. So those are things that you don't have at your access. So we are hearing that from folks, and that's hard. And then there's obviously been some very visible additional stressors when we look at the very, difficult and upsetting political climate, all of the racial tension and the rioting that has, been so scary for some people. Their inability to get voices heard has created a lot of added tension and stress. And certainly what we know about stress is that stress is cumulative. So all of these things just compile. And much like Anne talked about, like lack of sleep, if you're not sleeping well, it's very difficult to manage some of what we're experiencing right now between the COVID pandemic and all of the other things going on in the world today. And then I also want to comment on the vaccination process, which has been rolled out. I mean, we're hearing about it every day. It's offered a lot of optimism for people. And whether or not you're feeling comfortable with vaccination or not, I certainly think what we're hearing from folks is even if you're not quite there yet, you're feeling optimistic that as this is rolled out, as more people receive the vaccination, it creates more safety for everyone. And it takes us steps closer to returning to some sense of normal.
It's interesting that you make that observation as we had the very highest rate of COVID transmission out of the testing yesterday. So there's this dual aspect where I think a number of folks we talk to are feeling maybe cautiously optimistic for the first time, thinking maybe we're turning the corner, we're kind of getting closer at the same time as we're experiencing some of the highest rates of transmission and hospitalization in the process of the pandemic. So let's advance again, Allison, if we could, to the next slide. So thought it would be good to sort of share some of what we're hearing in the employee assistance program. We made some sort of general statements. One of the first things that we may hear, people have had different experiences as employees working. Many people are working remotely. There are a fair number of people who are also have been essential workers and have been working almost exclusively through this. For folks who we're hearing from who may be working from home, frequently we'll hear them discuss something like, we were doing okay at the beginning. It's almost kind of nice to be home for a little bit, but after 9 months, I'm missing being at work. I think another real common scenario we saw in the beginning of this process is, it's just we were experiencing a bit this morning, the ability to use technology and have our home offices and workspaces available and able to be utilized for good essential remote work. I'm struck, and Allison and I and the team have frequently spoke about how we're just almost impressed by how well things have gone. We work not only with the Yukon system in our employee assistance program, we work with many other state agencies, and things are getting done in a way that you might not have initially expected. Maybe it takes longer, maybe the system's a little more convoluted, but certainly there's been a lot of effort made to try to get as much done as possible. And the people working from home, another very common thing we're hearing is, I'm balancing a lot of work-life responsibilities. You know, Vicki talks about the work-life programming, and that's part of what they do in human resources. But as well, how do you balance? I had just spoke with someone yesterday who's caring for an elderly parent, concerned because that parent has now contracted COVID and is now in a nursing home. And how do you do that as you're also raising your kids? Spouses may have different levels of things. So I'm just struck people are bravely soldiering on and trying to get through this. When we talk to essential workers, in many respects, I find myself wishing I had a job that could let me work from home. I almost hear as many people working from home say, I can't wait to get back, and as many people who have been essential workers and presenting on campus and performing their functions who say, I wish I could have stayed home. I think we have to be respectful and mindful that there have been challenges for many of us, all of us in different ways. And so I think those are just to be appreciative of people's efforts and understanding that no one, or very few, I would imagine, have gotten through this easily. For parenting of school-aged kids, I mean, I think especially as school was out and people were trying to figure out, okay, I'm going to remote from home. My spouse is going to remote from home. The kids now need their own workspaces. There are so many issues around, you know, internet access and bandwidth and equipment and so many things. There have been challenges that, you know, when we say unprecedented, we truly think there's never been a situation that has been anything like this. For those of you that might be grandparents, I raised my right hand. And this is absolutely my thing. I have not been able to visit since not last Christmas, not this one that just passed, but the one before that. So I feel a sense of loss of not being able to check in with extended family, with grandchildren, with children who live away, extended relatives who you're close to. So that's certainly a challenge we hear many people speaking about. And, you know, that employee might have an elderly parent in a skilled nursing facility. Wow, you know, this is a case right off of a recent contact. My mom has dementia, doesn't understand why I'm not visiting. She thinks she's being left alone. And, you know, you've watched, and it's very hard to stay connected through remote means. You know, I think nursing homes have done a yeoman effort in trying to find ways of keeping their residents connected to family, but it's been a challenge. And for anyone who's had the unfortunate experience of, you know, losing a loved one or having a loved one become very ill in the COVID environment, I've heard many stories now about, you know, people just feeling they haven't had a chance to say their goodbyes or make the connections with their loved ones who they've lost. So these are some of the real challenges. And as Anne was mentioning in her presentation earlier, you know, we're hearing from a number of faculty members, well, I'm concerned about my students. You know, this is what's going on. My student is presenting. I'm concerned about their safety, about their wellness. And I found her comments interesting about how many of the students are also appreciative of that faculty concern. I would say in summary, you know, we're all in this together. And I think there have been very few people who've said this has been a phenomenal experience. And I am struck by how resilient we have generally been, how hard people have tried to make it work. And, you know, hopefully to give you some hope that as we move through the next few months, we're going to be moving towards a return to some normalcy. Let me kick it back to you, Allison, and you can proceed.
Yeah, just a little bit about what the research is showing too, that, and I think a lot of this has already been talked about, so I'll go through this quickly, but that we've seen certainly increased rates of depression, anxiety, substance and trauma-related symptoms. You know, a very concerning one, and this is certainly something seen through the EAP, as an increase in interpersonal and domestic violence. I mean, think about folks who are perhaps struggling in relationships anyway, and now they're at home 24/7. So it simply makes sense. One of the real interesting statistics to me when we looked at groups most impacted is that the research shows that the groups struggling the most, one of the groups struggling the most, are adolescents and young adults. And obviously shouldn't be a surprise. And I suspect, Anne, you and your crew are seeing this frequently. But, you know, young people in this age range developmentally aren't designed to be, you know, college students living back at home with their parents and going to school and living in their high school bedrooms. So these are struggling. lots of our employees have made referrals of their college-age students to us over the summer months. So that has been an increase for the EAP. Certainly racial and ethnic minorities, for obvious reasons. Over the summer months particularly, we had so many young people who were very active in some of the demonstrations, and it was scary times. It was scary times for them. It was scary times for their parents. The first call that I received after George Floyd was murdered, it is such a visceral feeling for me what that experience was like for a particular mother that reached out to us who had two young, Black sons who she was very worried about. And we did a lot of good work with her. Essential workers, obviously, that's something we see often here at UConn Health, and certainly all of the folks that are in the workplace, holding down the fort to keep our IT systems up and running. I mean, those folks are struggling. Unpaid adult caregivers. And lastly, individuals with histories of mental health issues. If you already struggle with anxiousness or you have some underlying depression, this particular time during COVID is especially hard. And Dave, I'll turn it over to you to maybe quickly go through this.
I think Anne covered a lot of this, and I just wanted to make a couple of comments and have you review this. One of the things I'm telling a lot of people when they're coming for a session or we're having a discussion is to just kind of take things down, to be in your control and what things are outside of your control. I hear many people worrying about things that they have no ability to impact. Secondly, I hear people projecting, well, what if this never improves? I joke with people, anxiety disorder and worry is about the disease of what if. If we worry about what could happen all the time, we're going to be missing out. And Anne had mentioned some of that. We have the concept in psychology that's very important, mindfulness, being in the moment, being present, being in the moment, and focusing on the things that are in front of us. So maintaining connection, if I were going to make one recommendation off this list, I think that is the most important, and it's stressed that as well. To have your network, whether that's, I've been struck by the creative ways people are getting together. I've heard some people say, I'm back in contact with my old friends from college, or my mother's group or my book club, in a way that we haven't been, because now we have the opportunity to meet remotely. And while it may have its challenges, I think many people have been finding ways of using social media platforms to stay connected with extended family. I think it's essential as well to be mindful of your neighbors and things. I was taking a walk just the other day with my wife down the street and saying, wow, it's kind of pleasant to see all the neighbors on the other end of the street out in their yards. We're keeping social distance with masks, but it feels nice to check in with people again and not just feel like you're living in a silo. So the rest are things that were sort of mentioned. Our intention for the program was to do a relaxation meditation. I'm mindful of the sense of time, so we've exceeded our time. So I'm just going to ask you to do a very small exercise with me and allow you to just have a moment. I'm going to ask you to get square in your chair that you're sitting with. I put my hands on my lap. I'm going to ask you to shut your eyes for just a moment. Take a comfortable, easy, diaphragmatic breath in. Hold it very gently for a count of 2, 3, and as you exhale, allow your shoulders to droop. Let the tension drain from your shoulders to your neck. Those muscles often are tight as we worry about things. The feeling of tingle or relaxation is relaxation taking the place of tension. I want you to think about different parts of your body as you massage your way down your neck and down your back to your lower back, down your shoulders, through your arms. Let the tension drain out of your body as if it's just draining right out. And the warm tingle that you feel that replaces it is relaxation taking the place of tension. Continue to breathe comfortably and allow yourself to feel a warm, massaging feeling in your lower back, into your thighs, into your knees, where you may have tension or some discomfort. Take a moment and allow yourself to feel a warm massage, tingle that may replace tension in those areas, and allow the tension to drain right down your legs, into your feet, and right out your toes. Allow yourself to just sit for a moment, breathing comfortably and allowing yourself to feel a sense of relaxation, comfort, and rest. And as we sit for a moment and give ourselves just a chance to enjoy that experience, I want to thank you for allowing us to be part of your meeting today. Please feel free to contact us. We're putting information in the presentation now about how to reach us in the Employee Assistance Program. The main office number is available by our 1-800. The number that you see addressed to me rings in our HONA building, which at this moment we're not present in, but will always be answered our main office line. So I want to thank you for giving us this time today and pass along to the next part of the presentation with our human resource colleagues. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And if I forgot to clap for somebody else, thank you. This is really great stuff. Thank you to Allison and David for that really nice presentation. We are so lucky to have these wonderful presentations. But as we are kind of getting low on time, let's finish up with Cindy Drost and Megan Stimson, who are leave administrators. This is kind of like what happens if you need a leave, or if you have there's so many reasons this might happen to you. And sometimes I think as faculty and staff, as employees, it's confusing how to manage these things, especially when you're probably at a low point in your health or well-being. So I'll let them take it away. They're going to talk about some of the nuts and bolts of this and offer us some ideas. And then at the end, we'll have a few minutes for more questions and answers.
Okay. Well,
Hi.
Thank
Let
you.
me share.
Thank you for including us in the presentation today. Yeah, some really, really great information and resources. So Cindy and I, yes, are both leave administrators in the Absent Management Division of HR. We're going to do just a brief overview today. Again, be mindful of time, so we'll talk quickly. Just on FMLA, if you do need a leave of absence, some FMLG, and then a brief overview of COVID leaves as well. So Cindy's going to bring the
Okay.
presentation.
Having a little difficulty. All right. Can everybody see that?
Yep, I think you just have to go into the slideshow. Okay, perfect.
Okay.
So just a quick overview of what FMLA is. So the federal and state FMLA basically are job protected benefits for employees that may need to be out of work for of a leave of absence. So if you needed to be out for a personal illness, your own serious health condition, that could be a surgery, cancer, mental health. That's one we've touched upon quite a bit today. So mental health as well. If you need to be out of work for a caregiver leave, caring for an immediate family member, child, spouse, parent, state FMLA also includes parent-in-law, the birth and care of a newborn child, or placement of a child for adoption or foster care. So If for some reason your leave was extended, you needed to be out beyond the federal and state FMLA entitlements, which we'll talk about again. CBAC supplemental leave is an additional entitlement that you may be eligible for as well.
I'm hitting to advance the next slide and nothing is happening. Okay, there we go. So as each person comes to us, we look at eligibility, and there are certain requirements for federal and state. So you do have to have 12 months of service, and then we run an hours worked report to see if you've met the hour threshold. If you're not eligible for federal or state FMLA, CBAC, you just have to be a permanent employee, which under unclassified just means holding a position of more than 6 months. Now, a lot of people will say to us, like, okay, I know I don't have 12 months of service. I'm not going to bother contacting HR because no leave is going to apply. But we encourage everybody to contact us, because even though some of these might not apply, there's other leaves that will, for example, like a pregnancy disability leave. So just because you don't have 12 months of service, there's a lot that we can do to help you navigate, a situation that you're dealing with, either for yourself or for your family.
These are the length of leave. So these are some of the entitlements that you'd be may be eligible for. So under federal, 12 weeks of leave in a 12-month period. Under state, 16 weeks in a 2-year period. And then if for some reason your leave was extended and you needed to be out and those entitlements were exhausted, you may be eligible for CBAC entitlements, which are 24 weeks in a 24-month period.
So the type of leaves that you can take a block leave, which means no work at all for a period of time. Intermittent leaves means that you're working full time, but you might need time here and there. And it can be as little as 15 minutes up to a full day. And it can cover treatment like physical therapy, going to a therapist office. It can cover, needing to drive a parent to the doctors, for example. So there's a wide range of things that it can cover. A reduced schedule is that you have a set part-time schedule. So for example, you're working half days for 6 weeks, or you're working 2 days a week to kind of ease yourself back in. You can also do a combination of leave. So you could take a block leave. For example, you had surgery, you needed time to recover. Then you come back to work and you need an intermittent leave for physical therapy. Under CBAC, it's a block leave only. And that, again, starts once all FMLA entitlements have exhausted. And then CBAC actually doesn't start until you've exhausted all of your sick time as well. So as each person comes to us, we look at your individual situation and what leaves apply. And, we try to help you out the best way we can and to meet your needs.
These are the faculty medical leave guidelines. They are applicable to tenure track faculty and non-tenure track faculty members who are on multi-year appointments. And they apply for long-term disability or long-term illnesses for FMLA qualifying medical reasons. So when a faculty member reaches out to us for a leave of absence, we evaluate your eligibility for the paid sick leave under the faculty medical leave guidelines. And as you can see on this slide, it breaks it down by your length of service or your years of service. So each leave is evaluated on that. And faculty members can only access these benefits once every 3 years unless there's other approval. And the information we're talking about today is found on the HR website, forms and information regarding everything we've talked about. So feel free to visit that.
So right now, in addition to FMLA and CBAC, there is something with COVID leaves. And so under a state statute, you can be eligible up to 14 calendar days, which is generally 10 work days of paid leave instead of using your own sick time. So what that means is, for example, if you're an OCP, you're full-time, you're working 35 hours a week, 2 work weeks would be equivalent to 70 hours. So you could be entitled to 70 hours of pay. And this is if you are personally sick with COVID and you're unable to telework, or if you're too, ill to telework. If your position doesn't allow telework, or if you're unable to work due to a family member having COVID. In order to use the paid time from the state, we do have medical documentation that's needed. So people do come to us, we work with each individual person with the documentation that's required, if they've used paid time in the past, kind of just where things stand. We also get a report from payroll every pay period of anybody that's using these codes. So if we miss somebody, we can reach out to those individuals. Once they've exhausted the paid time from the state, then you do use your own sick accruals. If you're in a situation, which hopefully won't be the case, but you're very ill from COVID, you've exhausted the paid time from the state, and then you're still out using sick time. Once you've used more than 5 days of sick time, then we start processing FMLA. So we would reach out to you with that information and, work with you on that. And then we're both split up kind of by bargaining unit groups. So I handle OCP, management, confidential. NP5 is the state and the police and the fire department. And then Megan handles faculty, the law school, postdocs, graduate assistants, NP3 and P2. So you can feel free to, reach out to us. We can help you.
And Cindy, who handles the AFSCME?
That would be Megan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have to double check that.
Yep.
And are there questions? Thank you. Well, first of all, I wanted to thank you both very much for this. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, we were trying not to give too much detail because it can get quite complicated with different laws and stuff coming into play.
But it's nice to know that there's individual availability, for people to talk about their problem, their, whatever their circumstances. And that's very helpful to know. And we really do appreciate it. We appreciate all our speakers. Yeah. Are there questions?
Yeah, and I was going to say,
go ahead.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, and if you do have questions, just be careful about not sharing, personal medical situations, like keep the questions more general. And if anybody has any situation that they would like to discuss in more detail, contact us individually.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to remember that.
Right.
Okay. Are there questions for anybody? Any questions that we have a few minutes open for questions? Does anybody have anything they'd like to bring up? Don't be shy. Okay, then last call. Well, we are actually just about in perfect time. And so I do hope that this was useful to all of you. And it was actually initiated because of a request at our college town hall in December. People wanted to know, well, what about us? What are the resources for us, faculty and staff? We talk about the students all the time. We always care a lot about the students, of course, but we're struggling too. And I think that this has been a very useful workshop and good overview and some good resources. Remember, it's recorded. We'll send you some information about how to access the recording, and the presentations, we'll try to put them up too. So if you forget where to go for something, that should be helpful. So I want to thank our presenters so much. This is like fantastic stuff, really great. Each and every one of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And also I'd like to thank the academic program staff. Our office is, we also miss being together. I think I certainly do. And, but I thank the whole staff, and in particular, Vicki Reiser and Jill Deans, who worked to put it together. You guys are the best. We have a great staff. And if we can help you, if you don't feel comfortable or don't remember where to go, just call 2919-486-2919. We still answer the phone, you know, and so give us a call. We'll help you out. If there are no more questions, thank you for attending and have a wonderful semester. Be well.